Hey, baby.
You're strong.
The Alien franchise has introduced us to a wide range of strange species that often end up being the star of the show. Ranging from the horrifying xenomorphs to the dangerous Hammerpedes, this franchise has no scarcity of strange creatures, and it keeps us on the edge of our seats. Out of all of these creatures, the Hammerpedes were exclusively featured in the 2012 film Prometheus, and they didn't come across as scary at first due to their harmless appearance. However, looks can be deceptive, and the movie's main characters soon learn better than to meddle with these creatures. Today, we will have a look at the physiological features and powers of the Hammerpedes and tell you all about these horrifying little creatures from Prometheus. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
And for God's sake, don't be. God, you're making it worse! It's tightening!
What did the Hammerpedes look like, and why were they so crucial to the story of Prometheus? Hammerpedes were tiny creatures with reptilian bodies. They could even be described as snakes with heads that resembled a stingray's upper body. In this manner, they appeared as snakes with crests on their heads, and they were especially unsettling due to their lack of facial features. They had a flat, bare crown for a head, and the movie's crew initially designed its head to have a hammer-like shape. Eventually, the designers gave them a smoother appearance with a flat head that tapers into a snake-like body, and they also didn't have any facial features. They have pale white skin that gave them a translucent appearance, and the designers took inspiration from translucent abyssal animals with visible arteries and veins below the skin in order to design these creatures. They even molded the creature's body with the help of translucent silicone and sculpted it layer by layer, beginning from their internal organs and muscles, and finally finishing with a lot of pearly paints and artificial skin. The Hammerpedes also seem to have mutated from the unidentified worms that inhabited the moon of LV-223, and they were Hammerpedes typically around 4 to 5 feet tall. Since they didn't have any eyes, fans have often wondered how they detect their prey. Some theories suggest that they either detect others' presence by sensing their movements or by reading their heat signatures. These creatures appeared in the 2012 film Prometheus, where they were discovered on the moon LV-223. When the US CSS Prometheus arrived on this moon, the ship's crew came across a mysterious temple. Two crew members, namely Dr. Elizabeth Shaw and Charlie Holloway, ended up coming across a room that contained huge quantities of the chemical known as A03959X.9115, or the black liquid. This chemical soon started leaking all over the floor, and it infected many regular worms that inhabited the moon LV-223. These worms then mutated into the creatures that we know as Hammerpedes, and two more crew members of the Prometheus were unfortunately exposed to them. Not knowing what to expect, Milburn and Fifield initially underestimated, and Milburn was even fascinated by them. While Fifield cowered in fear, Milburn tried to touch one of the two Hammerpedes that appeared before them. The creature immediately flared its head, lunged at Milburn, and soon wrapped its body around his arm and even broke it. While Milburn struggled to defend himself, Fifield acted fast and tried to decapitate the Hammerpede. However, this proved to be a horrible judgment on his part as the creature's acidic blood sprayed all over Fifield's helmet faceplate, disintegrating. The creature also regrew its head in a matter of seconds, and it soon slithered into Milburn's suit and made its way to his mouth. In a horrific turn of events, the Hammerpede entered his mouth and soon attacked him from within. In the meantime, Fifield ended up falling face first into the lethal A03959X.9115 chemical that was spread all over the floor, and this triggered a reaction that turned him into a mutant. The rest of the crew finally located this room a day later, and they were horrified to see that Milburn had died. After feeding on his body, the Hammerpede also jumped out of his mouth and made its way back to the containers filled with the black liquid. Exploring the much-debated origin story of the Hammerpedes. How did they come into existence? There are many different theories surrounding the origins of the Hammerpedes, and they were first discovered in 2093 by the US CSS Prometheus's crew. They originated on LV-223, one of the many moons of Calpamos in the Zeta Reticuli system. According to the most popular theory, these creatures mutated from indigenous worms that existed on LV-223 after they were accidentally exposed to the black liquid known as chemical A03959X.9115. This chemical was being tested tested by the engineers, who would set up their base at their temple on LV-223. Another alternate theory suggests that these worms did not exist on LV-223 and that the engineers brought them there in order to perform tests. Along the same lines, there is another possibility that these worms may have been on board the Prometheus, but this doesn't seem likely as they would have been unable to survive the trip. If they did exist on board the Prometheus, they would have died due to a change in atmosphere or starvation before reaching LV-223. Moreover, a deleted scene from the Blu-ray version of the film shows that their crew was quite excited to discover the small worms that later mutated into Hammerpedes. While it is unclear whether these small worms were actually an indigenous species from LV-223 or if they were brought there by the engineers, this scene did at least establish that they mutated on the moon. Another theory puts forth the idea that the black liquid created these small worms that later turned into bigger worms and finally mutated into the Hammerpedes. According to this theory, their life cycle was quite complex and these creatures went through several stages before taking their final form. During their evolution, the color of the black liquid kept changing due to changes in the atmosphere until it finally created the worms that grew into Hammerpedes. A similar process took place when a human accidentally ingested the black liquid, which triggered an evolutionary sequence that turned the human into a trilobite. While it is entirely plausible that the black liquid created these worms, another theory states that the engineers brought some soil from the worm's native planet. They replicated the atmosphere of the worm's native home on LV-223 and then exposed them to the black liquid that turned them into Hammerpedes. The engineers also mirrored the worm's native planet's atmosphere to an extent where any changes caused by the presence of humans or other beings would release the pathogen. While the Hammerpedes have several alternate origin stories, most fans seem to believe they simply originated on LV-223 after indigenous worms mutated after being exposed to the black liquid.
Oh, Jesus. It's in my suit. It's in my suit.
What makes Hammerpedes so dangerous? Hammerpedes were incredibly powerful creatures, and their tiny physique often led their opponents to underestimate. However, they were surprisingly quite strong and could easily break someone's bones. This was also seen in the movie when Milburn tried to touch the Hammerpede and the creature retaliated by wrapping its body around his arm and breaking it. Their crest also contained acidic blood that could cause any object to disintegrate, and this was inarguably their most powerful weapon. In order to defeat a Hammerpede, their opponents had to think carefully and avoid being exposed to their acidic blood. While Hammerpedes could survive with this acidic blood in their body, it is theorized that their blood only turns acidic when exposed to an external environment, and that the Hammerpedes are safe from its effects. These creatures also had the ability to regenerate themselves in a moment's notice, which made it difficult to kill them. When Fifield tried to kill them in the movie by decapitating them, the Hammerpede simply regenerated its head and left Fifield at a loss for words. Hammerpedes could also slither their way into someone's mouth, and this even happened in the movie when one Hammerpede entered Milburn's mouth, killing him in the process. Despite having traveled in and out of Milburn's body, the creature seemed unfazed and remained unharmed. The way in which the Hammerpede attacked Milburn was quite similar to the process by which a xenomorph impregnates its victim during the facehugger state. They would slither down their victims' throats and then impregnate them, thereby using their victims as a host for their children. However, it is unknown whether the Hammerpedes also tried to impregnate their victims or if they only used this strategy to devour their victims' bodies and kill them. Nevertheless, they caused their victims a lot of harm and they were quite dangerous despite their tiny physique. They were also hostile creatures who attacked anything and everything that crossed their paths, and interactions with these species did not end well for humans.
Cut it out!
How can Hammerpedes be killed? Hammerpedes only appeared briefly in this movie, and they disappeared after killing Milburn and attacking Fifield with their acidic blood. When Fifield went berserk and killed many people on board the Prometheus, the rest of the crew found Milburn's body after a day. The Hammerpede that had attacked him emerged from Milburn's mouth and returned to the containers filled with the black liquid. While they seem to have survived in this movie, Hammerpedes are not considered immortal creatures and can be killed in certain ways. There are no concrete ways to get rid of these creatures, but they share many similarities with the xenomorphs that are seemingly vulnerable to heat, extreme temperatures, as well as some firearms. While there is no concrete evidence as to whether the same tricks may work with Hammerpedes, one can certainly try to defeat them by using firearms or exposing them to extreme temperatures. Since these creatures have regenerative abilities, it would be hard to kill them by injuring their body, as they might easily heal themselves in a moment's time. However, if one were to blow them up entirely, there wouldn't be anything left to regenerate and they might finally be defeated. How do hammerpedes reproduce? Many alien species, such as the xenomorphs, were known for practicing endoparasitoidism, which refers to the process of impregnating their victims from the insides by laying eggs in their bodies. These eggs would incubate and grow within the host body, later erupting from within and killing the host in the process. Hammerpedes also share many similarities with xenomorphs, and there has been a lot of speculation as to whether the hammerpedes also use the same reproduction process. Moreover, many creatures that mutated as a result of the black liquid had similar means of reproduction, and we can assume that the hammerpedes also reproduce in the same manner. However, as we see in the movie, the hammerpede crawls inside Milburn's mouth and immediately kills him after devouring his body. It does not appear to impregnate Milburn, and it's quite unlikely that the hammerpede crawled inside his body in order to lay an egg. Another theory suggests that hammerpedes lay eggs in their victims' bodies before killing, and that these eggs feed on their corpses as soon as they hatch. In any case, the movie doesn't cover their reproduction process, but the most plausible explanation is that these creatures reproduce by laying eggs in one capacity or another. Conclusion. While the hammerpedes had a brief appearance in the film Prometheus, they certainly left quite an impact due to their jarring appearance and horrific ways of attacking their victim. They were vicious creatures who fed on their victims' corpses, and they were also nearly invulnerable due to their acidic blood and regenerative abilities. They were certainly one of the most fascinating alien species introduced in the franchise, and it's best to leave them alone and stay out of their way. That's all for this time, but if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.